The following presentation was recorded at the Aquaponics Association Conference in Tucson, Arizona on September 21st, 2013. For more information or to join the Aquaponics Association, please visit the site at www.aquaponicsassociation.org.
The panels, if you buy good panels or reputable panels, all the specifications will tell you what the efficiency of your panels are. It really doesn't matter what the wattage is, because you could buy, a 40-watt panel, but it's this big, or you can buy a 40-watt panel that's this big. It's all in the square footage, or the square meters that it consumes. So the panels that I have here, each one is 1.65 square meters in its space that it takes up, and each one is 14.8% efficient. So, back up to this number here, if you took the 2.5 kilowatts and took 14.8%, it gets us, I think, at about the 250 watts. So that's how those numbers are calculated. So when you buy a panel, they've actually put these panels, in some test room somewhere and determined what the efficiency was of that panel. Okay. Here's one of the black magic numbers that nobody ever knows about. And you can see I wrote guesstimate next to it. You have to figure out how much loss you're going to have with your system by just not getting light into it. So, like I said earlier, if you have a fixed panel, take 20% off of loss of electricity, just because you get sun coming in at an angle in the morning and it's not very efficient. And then other losses, like trees, that's the main problem. Or if you're near another tall building or something, if it's going to shade it, that's part of your percentage of loss. So, for our place, I had a couple big pine trees that were sort of in the way and lost during the winter just from it getting some dappled sunlight through some of the other trees. I said 40% loss.
Are you also including loss in the wiring and the stepping of the voltage?
Nope, that's the charging efficiency down below. So based off of these calculations, and you can see here, I put the calculations in, so if you know Excel at all, you could actually figure out, you could recreate the spreadsheet if you wanted to and come up with these numbers. So based off of these calculations, the system is telling me I need 7.5 panels just to get me enough electricity to keep the system charging. I hope the light's not going to burn out on that. And I have 12 panels on my system. When I originally purchased it, I had the 8 panels, and it just wasn't enough over the winter.
It does that.
It does that?
It might have just timed out and you're not moving it.
Screensaver? The screen's blank on this one too. Time's up. We didn't pay. Oh.
It hit 50% depth of discharge.
Yeah. All right. Very good. So, so on my calculations, I put a depth of discharge of 25%, and the battery companies, what they do is they give you a chart. If you look up the specifications for a battery, and they show you if you consistently discharge your batteries to 50%, it's going to last this many charging cycles. In a charging cycle, you can assume it's a day. You're charging every day and discharging every day. So I chose to go with a 25%. Just going to keep doing this the whole time.
It did in the last class.
It did, and the class before that, it did come.
All right. Well, I'll stand here and. All right. I'm an IT guy. I should be able to work, right? But so I went with a 25%, and that will get me roughly 6 to 7 years of battery before I have to replace them. And we're going to go into the cost of that shortly. Okay. And the charging efficiency, 75%. there is always loss of power just to charge your batteries. You know, if you ever look at a standard lead acid flooded battery, they sort of percolate and stuff. It takes energy to store the energy. And there's some electronics loss with the charge controllers and whatnot. So a good rule of thumb is about 75%. So you start thinking about this, we have all this power coming in, 3 kilowatts coming into the system from the panels. You have some loss to the electronics for the charge controllers. You have some loss coming through the charging the batteries, and of course you have your load. So there's always power being lost along the line. It's just like high tension lines and whatever else. There's loss, resistance in the wires, everything. So this is one of my original mistakes, is not taking into account the loss with some of the different electronics, and that's why my first winter with the system, it was undersized and it wasn't enough to keep the system running. So based off of some of these magic numbers and this nice little calculation down here, the system says I need 6.6 batteries for 1 day of storage of power. Now, being in New England and we get nice cloudy weather, we're not quite as bad as being up in Seattle or something. I decided to put 8 batteries. Is that what I said I had on there? Thank you. I can't remember my own system now. 8 batteries just to keep it running. Basically it can run for about 2 days, because I can depth of discharge it down to 50%. So, 25% in a day I'd lose with the 6. With the 8 I can get it down to about 50%, and it could last about 3 days. And, that's 3 days with those huge honking batteries to run 2 minutes. We're going to run late. Yeah, what time is it now? Oh, we're good. So, it depends on how much you want to, put in for batteries. Each one of those they're about $500 each. So I got $2,000 of batteries sitting right there. Oops. Let's talk about electric costs. Excluding Hawaii, Connecticut, where I am, is tied with New York for the most expensive electric rates in the nation. So you would say, great, let's put solar in because we can offset some of those costs. And it seems to make sense. I think here in Arizona it's 11.1 cents, and I don't know who's cheapest. Looks like South Dakota, North Dakota, Idaho is cheapest. I guess this is sorted lowest to highest, isn't it? So Idaho's cheapest. Anybody from Idaho? No. Okay. So we pay a lot in electricity out our way. Considering we have nuclear power plants, in state and all over, spread out through New England. I don't know why it's so expensive. I think part of it is maintaining the infrastructure. We get a lot of hurricanes, blizzards, there's trees everywhere, and there's line crews, trying to keep the system going all the time. So I think there's a lot of labor involved with just keeping the grid operating in our area. So let's look at the return on investment, and this is for our farm operation. And I don't want to scare people away from going off grid with their system, but this is a real world scenario here. And I'm going to show you how much it costs to install the system and what the return on investment is going to be for this. So our daily electric consumption in the greenhouse is 2.76 kilowatts. We saw that earlier. And so, at the 18 cents per kilowatt hour, basically we're saving 50 cents a day to run the pumps off this setup. Spent $10,000 on this setup for the 3 kilowatt system and all the batteries and the charge controllers. So anybody want to quickly do the math in their head, how many years it'll take for this system to pay for itself? It's 54 years. So I did the insult of basically for this system, it was a really bad investment from a business standpoint. It's the facts. It's just, that's how it is. If you're here in Arizona, you install a system like this, you're going to be golden. It'll cut your cost back in half. 20 years probably pay for itself. The issue is that's great. If you say I'm going to do that and it'll pay back for itself in 20 years or whatnot. You have to remember you have to replace your batteries every 7 years if you're lucky. With my cost, we're at $4,000 per set of batteries. The electronics, those load controllers, they won't last forever. You're pumping a lot of power through them. They're going to wear out. The ones I have a 2-year warranty on them. Again, you may be 7 to 10 years just with those the charge controllers rather to keep those going.
Your benefit though, what was the cost per watt 10 years ago?
Yeah, I don't know what. Yeah, it could have been. Yeah, you never know. You get the grid independence, so if you want to, be off grid and not have to worry about the power company powering it, some people have no problem going off grid. So I'm not criticizing anybody for doing it, but if you're going to run a business, typically you're looking at your bottom line. You want to make sure that what could I have done with my setup for $10,000 more, doing something else. So
I'm a general contractor. I just installed a 20 kilowatt backup generator on the house that we're building, and the installed cost was like, say, $7,500.
I would put a generator in. If I was doing this over again, in fact, I think that's on our next slide. Any questions on the return on investment here? Yes, sir.
Based on the same idea here, doubling your batteries just stayed on the net, so you've got your backup system.
Yeah. For our situation, it was more difficult. We have our greenhouse is on a separate parcel of land than the house because we separated it for the business versus the personal. Technically, we can't run power over the power line or over the property line because you can't sell power to a secondary company. So if we wanted to be tied into the grid, we would have to have a separate utility hook up for it. And our greenhouse is 300 feet off the road, so we have to trench it and conduit. We're in New England, and if anybody's lived in New England, it's all rock. And I have to bring an excavator in. And for the conduit, pull the power line, and the excavation work, we're looking at $4,000 or so just to get power into the building. And then we're paying a monthly fee just to have the courtesy of having a connection to Connecticut Light and Power. Yes, sir.
The other X factor is the reliability of your grid.
Yes. So
In the winter?
in the winter. So let's talk about that real quick. So other options. Grid tie system. It really is a good idea, especially out our way. We have tons of extra power coming into the system over the summer. It's just more than I can know what to do with. So basically it's burning off. It doesn't burn off, it just doesn't get absorbed into the system. So if you grid tie your system and you have a system this large, you have the choice now of having a smaller system and just sort of augmenting your power costs a little bit. And if you have a lot of sun, you're selling back your power for credits to the power company.
Does the power company, are they required to buy your...
Yes,
They are.
they are, at a discounted rate.
No.
Now during the night or during the day, if you're running your air conditioning or something else, you're buying back that power at the higher rate. And most places, they only give you a credit to your account. So if you have a large system that is producing tons of extra power and you never need to buy power back in, you just keep accumulating a credit on your bill. And if you say, hey, can you send me a check? They're like, no, it's a credit. They don't look at it as income for you. So you have to be very careful, and you'd have to check with your local utilities to see if they actually truly buy back your power.
It depends on the state.
It depends on the state. Connecticut does not. They issue credits. So just like I said, sell excess power or consume less grid power. One of the other issues is if you're tied into the grid and your power goes out, with most systems, the power company shuts off your power anyway because the grid tie system is synchronized with that nice 60 hertz system, and when it detects there's no power, you're out of luck. You're done. We have a guy in the neighboring town, has a huge grid tie system. When we had the hurricanes come through last year, he had to pull out his generator because he could not, a beautiful sunny day out, he had no power. Just because the power company does not let you suck off of that system. And it's his own system. It's not like it's a lease system or anything. So again, you have to check if you're grid tying and you think you can be sufficient being off grid, or if the power's out, you have to make sure that you can still tap power off your system. So something to watch out for. No batteries, but it needs a grid tie inverter. So one way to save costs is, again, take out the batteries out of the system. I have seen grid tie inverters that you can have a battery bank on it, so if you do lose power, you can continue to run your system. Those are really expensive systems. And I looked into it and trying to figure out how I could tie into the grid and get batteries in there. But now you're paying for a very expensive grid tie inverter and a couple $1,000s in batteries. So your prices just keep going up and up. So get a UPS backup for power failures. If I was running this as a real business, honestly, I would run on grid and just get a nice big, like a server or PC backup power supply system and plug your pumps into it. And it would run for a few hours. And then from there, if you know you're going to have extended outages, get a generator that can run the system. By the time you know your power's out, especially if you have like a home business type aquaponics system, you're at your house, your power's gone out. So either get an electric transfer generator that could just auto start itself. I'm going to use Harbor Freight as an example because they're super cheap. I saw the other day they had a little like 300 watt generator, just a little pull start thing. I think it was like $150 or something, a little gas generator. So keep a 5-gallon tank of gasoline, put a little gasoline stabilizer in there, and for a fraction of the cost of a solar system, you could back up your system that way. Again, I hate to say this, but I look at, being an engineer, I'm looking at numbers on everything, and it's, for us where we are, it's very hard to justify doing the solar. However, you can look at hidden costs. We have people coming to visit the greenhouse and they're like, oh great, it's solar, you're very environmentally friendly, and that's not, yeah, it's true, and we're a little bit more self-sufficient with it. So there's a cost to being self-sufficient with that. So the other option, like I just said, skip the solar altogether, invest your money in something else, a small backup with generator, and take your whatever $10,000 and buy nice big fish tanks and a little greenhouse to put everything in. I don't know. So as you can sort of tell from this presentation, the real trick is you got to do your homework to make sure you understand what's involved with running a solar setup. My solar, like I said earlier, I installed it myself, so that was the $10,000. If you hire an electrical contractor, it's going to be a lot more to install it. That's their expertise. You have to trust what they're doing. There's permitting. If you tie into the grid, you got to usually get a permit with their power company. They come out, do a site survey of your setup. There's other costs with that too. Oh, the end. So I'd like to thank you for watching. I don't know if anybody of you have seen the videos that I put out on YouTube. I sort of outline all this. In fact, I'm recording this today, so this video will show up on YouTube. It's the Web for Deb channel, and we put all types of aquaponic type stuff on YouTube. Show how to build bell siphons and show our different setup with the system, how we built the greenhouse. That's like a 12-part series on how that all went together. And the latest thing that we've just come out with, you probably have picked up the brochure, is the Track My Plants website that we came up with, where you can enter in statistical information about your growing of your plants, and basically keep track of how your growth is on your plants. Calculate, put in your weights of your harvest and whatnot, and see what you're really getting out of your system. So that's something we're actually just introducing this weekend, and it's new and sort of exciting to play with. So do we have any additional questions? Feel free to speak up. Yes?
Economies of scale, as you get larger and larger with the aquaponics facility or any facility, is it more cost effective? Is it pretty much the same?
It's usually about the same because if you put in a larger grid or even a grid tie system or a battery system, you either have to get more batteries to run that system or you need more electronics to run it. And the electronics are really what kill you on your price. People, you'll see advertised sometimes, install a solar system for only $1 a watt. Yeah, it's true. The solar panels, just by themselves, each 250 watt panel costs $250. So there's your buck a watt. After that, it's all in the electronics and the batteries. So when you're pricing out a system, you can roughly use the 1/3 rule. 1/3 of your cost is going to go into the solar panels. Another third is usually into the electronics, and the last third is usually into your batteries. Yes, sir.
How popular is emergency generators that utilizes propane gas?
A lot of it depends. Propane's really good, or the diesel generators, because propane and diesel usually don't go bad like a gasoline generator would do. So there are a lot of generators that will auto switch over and just kickstart. They detect there's a power loss, they just turn on with their diesel or propane. It's a very good way.
You can store like for years.
Years and years with propane. Yeah. Or if you're in a more urban area, better yet, try to tie in with the natural gas lines.
And then one more question.
Yes.
About that DC pump. I mean, that really is proprietary information.
Yeah, right now it is. It is.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. At some point I'll do if you keep track of my YouTube channel or Facebook, at some point I'll just put information out about that pump. So. Anything else? All right, thank you.